That's right. Let's start with tariffs, John, because look, this is something that the president had threatened to do. He was moving forward to do it more than a month ago, and now it is here. It's something that still, even in the final hours yesterday, as they were leading up to this new deadline of this morning, people on Wall Street, people on Capitol Hill were still hoping, and certainly, of course, Ottawa and Beijing and Mexico City were hoping that the president wouldn't move forward with, but now he has. I'm just going to break down exactly what these tariffs are. One is that we know that he has implemented the 25% blanket tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Those took effect this morning. But then he also bumped up tariffs on China from 10% to 20%. And immediately, we've seen some of these countries retaliate with tariffs of their own. China, for example, retaliated by announcing 15% tariffs on chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton imports from the United States. They also announced a 10% tariff on soybeans, pork, beef, and other various goods. Canada, for their part, we heard Prime Minister Justin Trudeau say that they are going to have $30 billion or tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. goods, and that they would impose an additional 125 billion tariffs on American goods by March 25th.
These court cases that Trump's been contending with for quite a while now, finally another one has just made its way up to the Supreme Court. We have a pretty surprising ruling here. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, Brian, this I view as the first test of whether the Supreme Court will let Donald Trump's sort of appetite for dictatorship, his abuse of power, go completely unchecked. And at least today, 5 Supreme Court justices said, no, we're going to be a legitimate check on Donald Trump's sort of, desire for unconstrained power. And here's what they did. A lower court judge, a judge named Amir Ali, had ruled that Donald Trump's freezing of all money, all congressionally appropriated funds that were going to U.S. aid organizations, Judge Ali ordered, you have to unfreeze it and you have to make good on your financial obligations. You have to pay the U.S. aid contractors the money that essentially they are owed, that Congress appropriated for this purpose. So, of course, once Judge Ali told the Trump administration, no, you can't do what you want to do, Donald Trump beat feet up to the Supreme Court. And Brian, today, 5 of the justices, including crossover justices, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, side with the liberal wing of the Supreme Court. They said Judge Ali's order stands.
Yeah, byline on this news story, the headline, struggling with errors, Doge deletes billions more from list of savings. The subheadline reads, for the second time in a week, Elon Musk's government overhaul effort updated its wall of receipts to remove mistakes that inflated its success. I mean, you and your colleagues have done such incredible reporting on this, showing many of the mistakes and false numbers that this Doge team have posted on their so-called wall of receipts, overstating savings, claiming an $8 billion savings instead of $8 million. Your latest reporting involves contracts Doge was claiming credit for cutting, but some were actually canceled long before Trump's first term even began, as far back as 2005. Can you walk us through some of what you've learned?
Yeah, what we're talking about is what Doge calls its wall of receipts. Basically, it's a list of contracts that it's claiming credit for having cut and the savings it says it achieved by cutting them. It's really the only place where they show their work at all. The only time they ever show us how they get to the numbers they claim for the savings. So you can go down this list and you can see the details of these contracts. And you said in 2 of the cases, they were counting as canceled 2 contracts that actually just ended on their own when George W. Bush was president, from 2005 and 2006. And each of those contracts, they claimed a $53 million savings now. So that's the kind of error we're finding. It's not rocket science. You could click literally on a link and see that this was 20 years old.
Now, is that, I mean, if you can find that out, how long did it take you to find that out? Is it a simple mistake on their part, or is it deceptive?
Well, what it is part of a pattern, right? We're looking in this is, as I said, the one place where you can see Doge show its work. And we're looking in there to see, are they competent? Do they know what they're doing? When they're looking at government contracts, which, again, that's the job they're out there to do, is to change the government, to overhaul it, to make it efficient. Do they understand the government itself and how it works? And the errors we're finding them making, I mean, you mentioned some of them, confusing millions with billions, triple counting the same contract, counting contracts as canceled that had actually been canceled long before, those aren't like difficult things to spot. And it speaks to sort of a carelessness or just a lack of familiarity with the government that they're now basically in charge of.
And has there been any explanation from the White House or DOJ as to why they got this stuff so wrong?
The barest of explanations. What they've said is, well, these numbers came from the agencies themselves. Federal agencies sent us these numbers. But again, like, DOJ is supposed to be in charge here. And the errors they're making seems like they didn't look at these things at all or think about them. You mentioned one earlier where they confused billions with millions. That's not a mistake that anyone should have made, because what they said was that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, had saved $8 billion by cutting one contract. Well, if you think about that for 1 second, $8 billion is ICE's entire budget. So how could you ever thought they gave their entire budget to one vendor? It's that kind of mistake that seems like they're not really paying attention.
Well, Donald Trump backed down today. It doesn't happen every day. But because Donald Trump is actually, by far, the most cowardly president we have ever had, who's pretending to be a tough guy, he has backed down in his first presidency and now in this one more than any other president has done it. He backs down within a day of making decisions, pulls them back. Donald Trump backed down today, and no one was surprised. There are people who have to make their living based on knowing when Donald Trump is going to back down. They include the richest people in America and their day-to-day investment practitioners on Wall Street. Wall Street knows that Donald Trump is a pathological liar, which everyone knows. And Wall Street knows that Donald Trump doesn't understand anything about economics. Nothing. Wall Street has been listening to Donald Trump very carefully for years, and they've never once heard Donald Trump accurately describe what a tariff is. The truth of tariffs forced Donald Trump to back down today. Wall Street knows that Donald Trump lies every time he talks about tariffs. Everyone on Wall Street knows that no foreign country has ever paid an American tariff and never will. Wall Street knows the only people who pay Trump tariffs are people in the United States who pay for imported goods, like, say, coffee. Unless you're one of the lucky ones who has tasted the very small batch and very expensive coffee grown in Hawaii, not one drop of coffee you have swallowed in your life came from an American coffee bean. Every ounce of coffee you have swallowed came from another country. According to Donald Trump, the United States of America should be buying nothing from other countries. Tell that to the 211,000 people working in Starbucks just in the United States and the 361,000 people working in Starbucks worldwide. The coffee economy in the United States employs literally millions of people, all based on a product imported from other countries, imported from Africa, imported from South America. And this country could not survive a day without coffee, and we all know it.
His mass firing of thousands of federal probationary employees was likely unlawful, and now ordering the Office of Personnel Management to inform some of the affected agencies it had no authority to even make those cuts. One of those probationary employees, 24-year-old Michigan native Riley Cooper, was just let go by the U.S. Forest Service and shared her heartbreaking story with the Washington Post. You see, Riley has dreamed of becoming a mother. After a doctor told her that IVF could be her only hope of having children, she turned to Trump, who had promised on the campaign trail to fully cover the procedure. It ended up being the very reason she cast her ballot for President Trump this past November.